Hello, my name is Dr. Jeffrey Thibert. I'm Assistant Director of National Fellowships in the Center for Undergraduate Scholarly Engagement, or CUSE, at the University of Notre Dame. And for the next few minutes, I'm going to offer a brief introduction to the National Science Foundation Graduate Research Fellowship Program. This is meant as a brief initial introduction to the program. We won't be going into detail about application advice here. There are other resources available for that. But my hope is that by the end of this session, you will be able to determine whether or not this award is something you would want to pursue. So I have a handout available. This handout is available on the National Fellowships website for the NSF GRFP, as this award is known. If you go to fellows, plural, .nd.edu/fellowships/NSF-GRFP, you will find our page about the NSF GRFP, which will include this handout on it. So you can, of course, pause the video and go there to download the sheet to follow along. I'll also be displaying it here on the screen as we go. So I will bring up the sheet now. You should be able to see it there. So first of all, the NSF GRFP is meant to, as they say, ensure the vitality of the human resource base of science and engineering in the US and reinforce its diversity. So the funding for this award comes from the US federal government, and the aim is really to support and diversify the people who are doing interesting research in science and engineering. Now, what should be noted is that the support is for graduate study in STEM fields, which includes social science. The money can only be used for a research-based graduate degree at an accredited US institution. So this money could not be used to support graduate study outside of the US. You have to be interested in an institution in the US. Also, it's limited to STEM fields and the social sciences. So this money is not available to humanities scholars, for instance, or scholars in the fine arts. Now, it can support any type of graduate study. So it can support a master's degree as long as the master's is research oriented. If it was purely what you might think of as a practical master's degree where research wasn't involved, this award would not support that. There has to be some kind of research that you would be pursuing. So PhD applicants are more common, of course, although you could possibly, depending on the master's programs you were interested in, use this award for master's study. They do strongly encourage underrepresented populations in these fields to apply, though the award is open to all who are eligible and qualified. Just to give you a sense of the competitiveness of the award in this most recent year, which is 2015, approximately 2,000 fellowships were awarded out of over 16,000 applications. And if you visit this website here, you will, and that's www.nsfgrfp.org. If you visit that website, you will be able to make your way to the Fast Lane system. You can also Google NSF Fast Lane. But on the Fast Lane site, you can actually find a complete list of those who were awarded the fellowship in this most recent year and many years going back. So that might help you to give a sense of how the awards are distributed among fields. You can filter the list according to the field that you're in. You can download the list as an Excel spreadsheet to make that easier. But if you're interested, you might go through and do that. 16,000 applications is a large increase this year. In the past, the number has been closer to 10,000. So it's hard to say if that number will stay the same, but typically they have given around 2,000 fellowships a year. Sometimes that number goes up or down, but in recent years, it's been around 2,000. Now, to be eligible for the award, you have to meet the following criteria listed here. First, you must be a U.S. citizen, national, or permanent resident. If you do not fall into this category, you are not eligible to apply for this fellowship. The second point is, as I noted earlier, you have to be planning to pursue a research-focused master's or PhD program in a supported field at a U.S. institution starting in fall 2016. You also have to be a graduating senior, an alumnus or alumna, a first-year graduate student, or a second-year graduate student. In CUSE, where I work, we work primarily with undergraduates and undergraduate alumni, so we would be working with you if you're a graduating senior or an alum who's interested in this award. The graduate school has an Office of Grants and Fellowships through which they work with graduate students who are interested in that award. If you go to the Notre Dame Graduate School website and look up the Office of Grants and Fellowships, which is in their professional development section, you can find more information about that. If you have questions about this, you can, of course, contact me. All the contact information you'll need is down here at the bottom of this sheet. But you can email me at fellows, plural, @nd.edu. Now, we've seen the eligibility requirements. They're fairly straightforward. Anybody applying to do a research-focused graduate degree in the U.S. Who will be a senior in fall of 2015, or an alum, or a first-year or second-year graduate student is eligible to apply, as long as you're a citizen, national, or permanent resident of the United States. So who's competitive for the award? And this, for many people, might be the more interesting question. First, I want to note that although graduate students will also be applying for this award, the NSF has said that graduating seniors and alumni are just as competitive. In some cases, graduating seniors and alumni are evaluated separately from the graduate students. So what this means is that, of course, first and second year graduate students will have a clearer idea of the research they're going to be doing because they're already going to be at an institution. Graduating seniors, of course, will not even have applied in many cases to institutions by the time they apply for this fellowship. So there's a little bit more flexibility allowed in applications from graduating seniors because they won't expect the same level of specificity in a research proposal that they would from the graduate student. So that's the first point. Second, competitive applicants have usually already engaged in research in their fields. And I would say it would be difficult to be competitive for this award if you had not engaged in any research at all in your field. The award is competitive enough where not having done research is likely something that would rule you out. The next point is what I was mentioning earlier, that it's not necessary to have a detailed graduate research plan, although you'll need some general idea of the line of research you plan to pursue. And ultimately, I think what makes an application most competitive is if you can address throughout the application the two primary review criteria: intellectual merit and broader impacts. And we'll talk more about what those mean in a moment. What is the application like? The entire application is submitted online at this website here, fastlane.nsf.gov/GRFP. And this is the site where you can find the information about former recipients of the award that I was talking about earlier. Now, in addition to some basic biographical information, the application consists of the following items, and these are really the key items in the application. 1, personal relevant background and future goals statement. That's 3 pages in length, and these are typical pages, usually single or double spaced. The graduate research statement is 2 pages, and then you are expected to get 3 letters of reference. And to briefly talk about these 3 letters of reference, you will need references from ideally people who have supervised you in research or people who have had you in the most challenging classes in your field. So when you're looking at potential letter writers, you would want to first prioritize people who had assisted you with research. And then second, you would want to prioritize people who had assisted you with the most difficult or advanced classes that you had taken. So what I'm thinking here is, for instance, if you had taken graduate level classes, then that might be something where you'd want to ask the professors of those classes to write letters for you. But as I said, first priority would go to people who had supervised you in research. Now, the personal relevant background and future goal statement, to step back for a moment, I think of this as the bookends to your graduate school research proposal. So in the research statement, you will be talking about the research that you are interested in doing at the institution or the institutions to which you're applying. That's where you give a sense of the general line of research that interests you. The personal relevant background and future goals statement, however, are what you have done leading up to graduate school and what you plan to do after graduate school. So these are the bookends to the graduate school experience. But note that it asks for personal relevant background here. What this means is they're not looking for your entire life story. They're looking for the elements in your background that are relevant to what you're proposing to do in the application. So this is where you would talk about research you have already done. This might be where you talk about how you initially became interested in this field of study or this line of research. The future goals part, you would talk about what you plan to do with all this. What are your goals after graduate school? Do you plan to go into the academic world, into industry? Where are you headed? That's the story you tell in the 3 pages. In the research statement, you talk about what you would actually plan to do in graduate school. Now, again, graduating seniors applying for this are not expected to have the same level of specificity as a graduate student because you don't know where you're going to end up. But you should still have a sense of the kind of research you would want to do. And if you have narrowed it down to a few institutions that interest you most, you might mention those institutions here and mention the kind of resources they would have available that would become part of your research. But they're essentially here interested in what are you going to do in graduate school? What is your plan here? And by the way, these can be single-spaced documents. So 3 pages, single-spaced, 2 pages, single-spaced. And then again, the 3 letters of reference, and you will, of course, need to submit transcripts. Unofficial transcripts are accepted here, although Notre Dame doesn't have a great system for unofficial transcripts, so I usually do recommend getting an official transcript because it will read more cleanly in the application. Now, there's a lot of advice available about these statements online, and we'll talk about how to find those resources in a moment. I want to focus now on the 2 primary NSF criteria, intellectual merit and broader impacts. Now, intellectual merit is probably what you would expect. It's talking about your ability and your project's ability to advance knowledge and understanding within your own field or across different fields. That means interdisciplinary research would be encouraged. Now, they want to see if the kind of research you're doing are original. Or the kind of research you're proposing doing is original? Is it creative? Is it potentially transformative? Is your research plan well-reasoned, well-organized, based on a sound rationale? So they'll be looking here at the research you've already done and at the research you're proposing to do in graduate school. So it is very helpful if you can explain why the research is creative, original, transformative. Why is this research important within the field of study? Not more broadly, we'll get to that in a moment, but within the field of study. How is the research you've been doing, how has that research advanced the field? How is the research you're proposing to do going to advance the field? And also, can you write a good research proposal? Do you have a good research plan? Does it make sense? Does it seem doable? So that's intellectual merit. This is the kind of thing that it's likely a graduate school would be looking at in your application. They'll want to see if you have the potential to do outstanding research. Broader impact is different, and I think this is what makes the NSF application unique. Many applications would not ask you to focus on something like this. The NSF does, and this is again because the money comes from the federal government, so they want to see that what you're proposing can benefit society or advance desired social outcomes. Now, something to note is that they're not only looking at whether your research would do this, but also whether you can do this. So this is clearer, I think, when you look at what societally relevant outcomes include, and this is on the list here. You see there's a lot of them, but some of these have more to do with the diversity of the field. So for instance, have you done work with K-12 outreach? Have you done work with groups that aim to increase the full participation of women in the field? Have you worked with groups that help underrepresented minorities in the field? Have you worked, again, in STEM education or K-12 outreach? That's one aspect of this. The other aspect is the kind of impact your research might have. What would the benefits of your research be? Does it increase partnerships between academia, industry, and others? Does it improve national security? Does it increase the economic competitiveness of the US? And so on. What's the impact? So again, it's what the impact of the work is and what's the impact that you've had. So going back to these statements, they will expect to see both of these criteria addressed in both of these statements and in the letters. And we won't get too much into application advice, but they do recommend even having separate sections in the statements that address these areas especially, so that it's very clear to the reviewers how you're addressing broader impacts. So this should be in your personal relevant background, your future goals, and your graduate research statement. Throughout these 5 pages that you're writing, you need to make sure that intellectual merit and broader impacts are addressed, that they are included in what you have done, what you are going to do in the future, and what you plan to do in graduate school. Hopefully your letter writers would address these criteria as well. The strongest applications will have both criteria compellingly described in all of these items. The supported fields of study are listed at the website here. Again, most fields related to science, engineering, and social science are supported. Also, STEM education is supported. Usually the application goes live around August 1st of each year. Final deadlines are typically in late October or early November. The specific deadlines vary according to field. But just because the deadline or the application doesn't open until August 1st doesn't mean that you can't start working on it now. And in fact, I would encourage you, and by now I mean when I'm recording this, which is in April 2015, the more time you put into the application, the better. And that's because it gives you more time to think about it, but it also gives you more time to get feedback. And I will say that you will definitely, as I mentioned here in the next steps, you will definitely want to discuss the process with any and all research mentors. Their letters are going to be crucial here. Their feedback will be crucial. So start talking with them about your application as early as you can and see if they're willing to look at drafts. If they are, when are they willing to do that? Maybe you could even work out a timeline with your research mentors. Because the application does have to be technical, especially the parts that have to do with research, and there will be people in the field reviewing these. So if you're in biology, a biologist will be reviewing your application. So you can be somewhat technical here. So because of that, you need advice from people who are in the field. We, by we I mean CUSE, can help you with the structural aspects, the writing aspects. Are you addressing broader impacts? Have you addressed intellectual merit? But we can't help as much with the technical aspects. That's where you'll really need your research mentors, maybe graduate students who you work with, maybe your peers would be useful here as well, but you'll need them involved in the process. So get them involved even if the application hasn't opened up yet. And because the application tends to remain the same from year to year, you can start writing your drafts now. I should also note that if you have not already, if you're coming across this video on your own, do contact us here at fellows@nd.edu to let us know that you're interested in applying, so we can be sure to keep in touch with you to provide you with information. You should also visit the website here that I mentioned earlier, fellows.nd.edu/fellowships/NSF GRFP. There is a form there that you can use to RSVP, which will put you on our list, essentially, so you will receive information. But you can also email us directly at fellows@nd.edu. As we note here, in recent years, we've averaged 3 graduating senior recipients annually. We've also had some alumni win. This isn't a bad number at all. So it is possible to receive these things, but I will say that typically the people who receive these, 1, have started working on this ahead of time. 2, they have the full support of at least 1 faculty mentor, hopefully somebody who's assisting them with research. And I think that those are key elements of being competitive here. Though that can matter even more, I think, than GPA. If you have a lot of people, or if you have key people supporting you throughout the process, and you start working on it early so you have time to work through drafts, it can make a really big difference. So please do be in touch with us to get additional information. If you go to the website, our website, fellows.nd.edu/fellowship/NSF-GRFP. There are links to many other resources that will be useful. I will be checking in with people who have contacted us over the summer with additional information, chances to submit application drafts for feedback. So take advantage of these opportunities. We also have some sample applications you can look at, although you can find these online as well. But our goal in CUSE is to help you as much as we can put together a strong application for this award. There also might be other STEM-related fellowships that you would be interested in. I would mention the NDSEG Fellowship, the SMART Scholarship, the HERTZ, HERTZ Fellowship. So you can Google these to find out more. You might also visit our fellows website, fellows.nd.edu, and then /fellowships to find a listing of other fellowships. There's a link to other fellowships, and there's a whole STEM section there, which would be relevant to people in the STEM fields. There's also a section related to arts and letters or social sciences, which would be relevant to you all. So please do let me know if you have any questions about the process. Again, fellows@nd.edu is the best contact, and I look forward to working with you. So I wish you the best of luck, and I hope to hear from you soon if you're interested in pursuing the process further. Thank you.